I am fascinated by the introduction of the iPhone to a room full of diehard Apple fans by Steve Jobs. Why? Not because of the phone, as you might think, but actually because of the reaction of the audience. It's amazing how long it took them to actually recognize what was right in front of them. And that's what we're talking about this week. How hard potential often is to recognize, especially when it doesn't look like you, sound like you, or if the person has never seen it before. So stay tuned and learn more about how to make your potential ultimately recognizable and help teach other people about the future you. I am going to get started. So, for those of you that are new to the live show, welcome, welcome, welcome. And for those who are watching on YouTube, welcome also. Do feel free to join us on a future show live because shenanigans happen as always. You never know quite what's going to happen on a live show. Just as a reminder, I'm going to talk to you about the ideas. I am going to be looking for a volunteer today. We're not going to do the usual transformation, but something close as usual. I do like a little interactivity. Once we've done that, if you're sticking around, we will be having what we call magic time, which is where we're going to pick one person who is still in attendance to get a free one-on-one. I know Joan got hers earlier this week. We had an awesome chat. I was very tough on her, but we got to an awesome place at the end of it. And then we will be opening this up for Q&A time. And just a reminder, the Q&A time is not recorded and will not be going up on YouTube. So feel free to get everything out there because everybody has shown up today, has shown up because they are interested in exploring the future you. So everybody is going through the, oh my God, what happened? I need to start taking agency of my future you conversation. So you are among friends. So questions are there. So what are we talking about today? We are talking about recognizing potential. And I want to show you what I think is the most perfect example of why this is hard. So a little show and tell to begin with. Let me give you the screen. Hopefully you can see it. Let me go full screen here and hit play. Kelly, can I get a thumbs up that you can see
We
it
introduced
here?
the Macintosh. It didn't just change Apple. It changed the whole computer industry. In 2001, we introduced the first iPod. And it didn't just change the way we all listen to music. It changed the entire music industry. Well, today, we're introducing 3 revolutionary products of this class. The first one is a widescreen iPod with touch controls. The second is a revolutionary mobile phone. And the third is a breakthrough internet communications device. So, 3 things. A widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device. An iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device. And we are calling it iPhone.
All right. Yes, that was a long presentation, but what I want you all to pay attention to is how long a bunch of diehard fans took to get it. And it actually took, so if you unpack what he did in that presentation, I say he, I'm sure, have no doubt somebody super smart behind the scenes actually crafted that entire introduction, is he took them on a journey. He reminded them what they already had seen and what they already knew. He made it simple and recognizable through like a 1, 2, 3 step. And if you noticed, he actually laughed because he was like, they're still not getting it, even though they had announced what it was. There's actually, when he goes, it's not this, it's actually one device. And then the audience explodes because they finally get it. And I think that's such a perfect example of the very simple idea that potential is infinitely harder to recognize when it doesn't look like you, when it doesn't sound like you, or if somebody has never seen it before. That is the hardest part of talking about potential and how people see it differently. We just cannot recognize something we haven't seen before. Another really great example of this that was presented to me, I was listening to the foremost expert on black holes in space because super nerd, and I like to listen to stuff like that. And she, yes, awesome lady person, of course, was talking about how human beings can imagine 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions, but can't imagine 4 dimensions. And she actually talked about it in very simple constructs. She said, you know, if you, in 2 dimensions, if you drew 2 interlocking circles and said, can you pull apart these 2 interlocking circles? Could you do that in 2 dimensions? And everyone would go, no, because you'd have to break a line. If those 2 interlocking circles could be pushed into 3 dimensions, you just pull them apart. Super easy. You just actually lift one off the other. Now imagine you're in 3 dimensions and those 2 interlocking circles. Like, you can't actually imagine my fingers getting broken apart without actually breaking the loop. But mathematically, in 4 dimensions, you can. Now, she then went on to talk about Pac-Man and video games and how Pac-Man actually lives in a 2-dimensional world, which we see in 3 dimensions. We can see in 3 dimensions, and how to think about that. If you're interested, send me a note on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'll send you the article, but it's that whole idea. I still can't quite imagine how do you lift out a 3-dimensional into a 4-dimensional, because I've never seen it before. And when you are trying to teach somebody about the new you, if you're trying to pivot your career, and this is really important for somebody who has a story that is one and you're trying to be something else, or you're trying to, in essence, rebrand yourself, helping somebody see the different version of you is incredibly difficult. Helping somebody, again, who doesn't look like you and sound like you understand your potential is even harder. And so you have to go through those individual steps to go through the process and really understand what it is. So that is what we're going to talk about today, because I think we often rush through to the how do I create my jazzy language? How do I make sure I have an elevator pitch? And actually remind ourselves that really what we're doing here when we're talking about this concept of the future you is we're being teachers. And you're actually having to help people see something that maybe they haven't seen before, or maybe they have and they have an opinion about it already. The example in the iPhone presentation is people absolutely had a vision of 3 separate devices, and he wanted to help them have a vision of one in a very dramatic and very ta-da sort of way. So how do you start doing that in the world of human beings and people? Well, let me go over here and close out because I need to show more goodies to you. And I messed up my screens. Here we go. Oh, stop it. Okay. So, how do you do this for yourself? How do you think about this if you are in the world of how do I teach people about the future me? Well, so first of all, it's the really simple question is what is it you want to be teaching people? What is that thing that they don't know that you need to be sharing with them? Is it um, that a skill that you had could actually be applied in a different place? Is it so really something is really transferable? Um, do you believe that your current network has an opinion about who you are and what you're about, and you need to teach them? There is also my favorite. Are you known for being a get shit done girl and need to not, well, still be known that you can still get things done, but that actually your value is in your thinking and the future you? Although I will tell you, I just got hired by a get shit done guy who needed it just as much. So it's not just the ladies. So really thinking about like what is the new thing that I want to teach, and the easiest way to figure that out is actually to go back and do some market research on yourself. Go find out what do people perceive as your potential today. Actually do some market research and find out like how are they recognizing your potential, and then you can find out what you need to teach people. Then the second thing is doing what Steve did when he said, "Are you getting it yet?" Is using what is my favorite word in the world of potentialism. And that is the question, what did you hear? Because the question, what did you hear, does several things. So, one, it validates understanding. So often, when we have a very clear idea of who we are or what it is we're able to teach, we can see the thing that we are talking about all day, every day. It's crystal clear to us. Who we are teaching are people who it's not crystal clear to. And so you can see it, you're convinced. Actually saying to somebody after you've introduced an idea about you or something else, just before we move on, I'd love to ask the question, what did you just hear? Means that they're going to tell you back exactly what landed. They are going to start to paint the picture of what is their understanding of what you've just taught them. Bonus points with this, especially if you are doing this with somebody who's ambitious for you, a mentor, a sponsor, your boss, is it gives the people who have the ability to make decisions about you in rooms that you're not in a practice session on how to talk about your potential. Really important part of the process to make sure that's right, because you may have said something and they may still be like, you think about that audience at the iPhone launch, they were still in 3 product head literally until the moment he said there's actually one product we're talking about here, this is one thing, and he then started to show the iPhone. So really getting validation there. The third question I always like to come back with is, what do they remember? Because here's the other thing, you have all heard me say multiple times, every decision made about you and your opportunities is made in a room that you're not in. And yes, that room could be virtual, it could be real, but most often that room is someone or someone's mind. What are they thinking, and is it stuck in their mind? Have they remembered it? There's a thing called the forgetting curve, that when you teach somebody something new, they usually forget within about 72 hours of what it is you did, unless you give them a reminder trigger. And so I'm a super fan when I am teaching something. And for those of you that have come to the show lots of times, you'll know that I teach a lot of the same lessons, because sometimes it sticks and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes you just need a reminder. I come back and I say, hey, do you remember that thing I shared with you the other day? What do you remember? And whatever their answer is what landed. My classic example of this is for presentations when I used to be out in public doing this in front of big audiences. I would pop a picture of Sheryl Sandberg up on the screen, especially when I was speaking at women's conferences. And I would say, who is this person and what is she known for? Number one answer, lean in. Number two answer, there would be mumbles about her husband who has passed away. And number three answer would be COO of Facebook. What an amazing example of what people remember. And I'll just tell you, the Lean In book was written, I think, a little over 10 years ago. And even she has come back and said, I have a new lesson. Now, her challenge in the what did they hear, what did they remember on her second book, which was called Option B, is what everybody heard was Plan B, which I want to remind you all is actually a lady person product and not a book. So even somebody who has all of the resources and what have you, as Sheryl Sandberg, can make a hiccup on branding their next version. So you have to be really careful and get that. What did people hear? And my guess is the bridge between option B and plan B didn't actually quite get made. But she's doing other stuff and building a whole new career now anyway, because that's what's beautiful about human beings is we do evolve and change. But what do they remember can be really powerful. Now, am I saying that you need to write a book and start a nonprofit and start leading circles and all of that sort of stuff for people to remember you? Absolutely not. You can be far more subtle and far more thoughtful about this. I think another perfect example of helping people remember and doing it in a visual way is Ruth Bader Ginsburg's Collar. It's a really simple, very subtle way of telling a story of what she thought. And once you were a follower and understander, you understood without her having to say anything, which I think walks that beautiful line between I am promoting what it is I have to say, but doing it in a way that is generous and unegotistical and all of those sorts of things. And when I talk about all of my teaching, this is the line that I want all of you to walk on. Is it selfish enough that helps people understand why you matter, but generous enough to understand that actually others matter too? And it's finding that space between the two. So what do you want to teach people? Understanding that's that thing and keeping it really, really, really simple. And again, go back and look at that video. I think that is a masterclass on how to teach a really complex, like you think about how fancy this thing does now, really complex product in a very simple way, getting clarity on what they heard and then validating and anchoring in what they remember. And that's a really great way of helping people not only recognize your potential, but also start to talk about it in the future. Okay. And I'll just say this as a last point on this one. Every interaction is an opportunity to do this. The first time you meet somebody, when you're presenting your ideas within your team or your company, when you're just having your one-on-one. And does that mean that at every interaction with every single person, you need to sit down and go, what do I need to get out of this? Maybe. It depends on how you are doing in manifesting your ambitions with them, how you are doing in manifesting your generosity with them. But it's a question that we often forget to ask. And when you are clear about this and thoughtful about doing it in a way that is authentic to you, it makes it infinitely clearer for people to be able to help you. Because here's the last thing and a data point that I will share. There's a concept in the marketing world, which is truly the concept of can we help somebody remember a product, called frequency. And the mathematics and research shows that to help somebody remember a product, whether it's like a dish, you guys are going to see all of the stuff on my desk by the end of the day today. Any product, you have to actually show it to them 7 times before they remember it. This is why, FYI, when you go on to awesome clothing shopping site du jour and click on an awesome shirt or a pair of shoes, they seem to follow you around the internet for several months, weeks, days. That's because they're trying to up the frequency so that you remember them, so that eventually you go, yes, I will get those fabulous pair of shoes. Or like me, say, I have too many fabulous pairs of shoes already, and I am not wearing any of them because I am locked inside in a pandemic. So frequency is important. You remember it really easily, and it's actually about teaching other people that is important. I'm going to give you a real example. If you haven't heard this one before, it will help you understand the impact of just a little way of doing this. So I want you to meet Lucy and Sophie. And hang on a second. I think I've just shared the wrong screen. So Lucy is the first person I'm going to introduce you to. She says she's great at getting things done. She loves solving problems. She's known as a strategic thinker. Okay, does Lucy sound familiar to any of you? She should, because it's generally what most people say. I did a presentation the other day and called somebody spectacularly boring because they made that answer. They were a bit devastated for about 5 minutes, and then we gave them a transformation, and all was good. And it's because it's not only boring, it's not compelling, and it's not something anybody would remember. Now, if you flip this language around and say, okay, let's talk about Sophie for a second. Sophie says she's able to look at systems and processes and imagine them almost in 3D in her head. This means that she's able to test and iterate workflows, whether they're human or technical, and do it at speed. It's almost like she can create what did I call this? It's almost like she can play the game before the game is even played. And when you're scaling and growing a company or trying to build new things, this capability is critical as you grow. So here's my question. Would you want to meet Sophie? Is she as intriguing as Lucy? What have you learned about Sophie? So let's put, who wants to be my first demo person, or at least give me some feedback? Well, Dawn, I'm going to put you on the spot because you're a good game player on this sort of thing. So what did you hear when I talked about Sophie?
Well, Sophie, and I forget the phrase you used, but it sounded a little bit more interesting than Lucy, in the sense of to learn more, hear more, see what's happening.
Okay. And if you were looking for somebody who was a good process person, quite frankly, probably Sophie's going to get good at being good at getting shit done. How would you introduce Sophie to your boss?
Well, I'd want to use some kind of fun, dynamic phrase, I think, that, would show the future of what she's about and set her apart from others that my boss might be considering.
Okay. So, like, based on what you've just heard, what do you remember as a fun, dynamic phrase? Do you remember any of it?
I don't.
That's okay.
That's me, not you.
No, it's good. And would you go to bat for Lucy?
I would. I think it probably would take a little bit more work. So I think, what you talk about making it easy for people, I'd have to work more at it for her behalf. And
Yeah.
so when it's made easier for me, it's easier to go to bat. But I think I'd have to dig a little bit more with Lucy to find that interesting phrase, or somehow to turn that into something that would set her apart in the introduction to my boss.
Yeah. And thank you, Dawn. That was a perfect presentation and analogy of what actually happens, because we do, like, FYI, if you don't follow Dawn on LinkedIn and or Twitter, you should, because she has a genius and highly entertaining point of view to follow. I know I do. But she seems to know an enormous amount of people. And if I was going to say I wanted a job, so she's at Workday at the moment. If I wanted to get in at Workday, I'd be like, how do I make sure it's easy for Dawn to recognize my potential, which we just did with Sophie, not so much. I mean, she's an awesome person, so she'll be generous with Lucy. But you want to be more of a Sophie and more of a Lucy. Here's the sneaky secret, though. In this analogy, Sophie and Lucy are actually the same person, just positioned in a completely different way. And that subtle difference of teaching people about Sophie's potential made it easier for Dawn not only to remember her, but to want to help her. And I would actually say, to a certain extent, to want to help her, because who doesn't want to help the person who is a little bit interesting and has something good? Because here's the other thing that happens when somebody wants to help you is they win too. I know that the fuel of me is actually getting to introduce people to other people. It's rare for a day to go by for me where I'm not saying, oh, so-and-so, you need to meet so-and-so because of this magical, awesome thing, and shenanigans should happen. It is 100% the fuel that keeps me going, because this is when the fun starts happening. And it's this continued investment. And although I don't do it to invest in my relationship capital, it's this continued investment in relationship capital that has gotten me invitations to speak at organizations, has gotten me opportunities to speak at TED, has creates my pipeline for my business, has actually identified some of my very best friends in the whole wide world. And I think this world of ambition of man magic, and I do it for my own ambition and I do it to create the magic, is actually what powers a future. And when I think about the future of work and what we could build, a world that is driven both by ambition and generosity is a bit of an antidote to this greed economy that we are living in. And it's a space that I would really love to see. So there's a lot more to just how do you talk about the future you. I think it then allows us all collectively to actually build a much more optimistic and pessimistic and amazing future across the board. So something to think about there. Okay, enough about that. So how can you actually flip this? How can you be a bit like Dawn with other people? I've just talked about the magic of actually doing this with other people. There is nothing better than helping other people see their potential, and often is a catalyst for helping people start to articulate yours. And I actually think this is a better gift than giving somebody feedback. So when somebody shares an idea or shares something about them with you, saying, I hear this, is this what you mean? Before you go into, this is what I think, and this is how you can do better. Or one of my favorite things to do as an active potentialist, and this, by the way, is also the muscle that you can work out so you can get better at articulating your own potential, is actually articulating somebody else's potential, what you recognize when they are doing something. So you can say, when I talk about something, or when you talk about something, I see this or that. I have vivid recollections of some of my former team being having one career path and thinking, oh, I'm gonna grow up and be. I think they were on a salesperson career path and career journey, and it was clear to me that they had the ability to garner insights and ideas from data much faster than anybody else. And so I went and had a conversation with them, and I said, when you do that, you come out with much more strategic activities that the organization could do that could be really helpful. And actually, when you think about generating revenue for the organization, your ability to predict the future through data actually means that the company can do better, and the salespeople should follow you rather than you being one of them. And this conversation eventually ended up with me shifting them from the client services team into the yield and pricing team, where they got to build out that skill set and really find out if that's what they wanted to do. They're now heading up pricing at Snap and doing the work of their life. And it's that sort of conversation around potential that can really make a difference. Last but not least is coming in and saying, like, do you see what I see? So if it's somebody you're, obviously in that scenario, the person I was talking to was part of my team and I had the power to actually make that happen. It doesn't mean you can't also be a bit of a fairy godmother and potentialist for others and do you see what I see when it talks about potential? So this muscle of potential and making it easy for people to recognize and talking about your own is not only an exercise for yourself, but also can be an exercise for others. And if you think about the reason you are hired, the reason you are promoted, the reason you are put on a project, you're put on for one of three reasons: for your skills, what you know how to do, for your behaviors, who you are and what kind of an awesome person you are, and your potential and what you can do in the future. People are talking about the skills and what they can do all day, every day. It's something that we are all super comfortable in doing. People are also pretty good about talking about their personality and who they are and what they're all about. I think nobody is talking about, other than me, of course, potential and the language of it, which is why this is a little bit different, which is why it's a little harder to talk about, and why I want you all not only to practice it for yourself, but practice it with others, because it means that you will get more facility with the language. You will be more attuned to listening for it, and not only be able to be generous for others, but you'll be able to be generous with yourself. And that's actually the ambition I have for all of you, is how do you be a little bit generous, a little bit selfish for yourself, so that you can manifest your ambitions. So something really helpful to think about all of this. Of course, as always, the learning guide associated with this show has got many more questions and many more activities that I haven't covered today, that help you think about how do you make your potential recognizable, specifically around how do you test it out with people, because that's one of the best ways to do it. How do you make it real? So before let's do magic time real quick, actually, as I've got it up on the screen. So Kelly, you want to go ahead and pull our winner for this week
Yes.
on the magic time?
This week is Lindsay Evans.
Lindsay, congratulations. Hurrah. I don't see her on this screen, but that's okay. Lindsay, we're going to be sending you, oh, there you are. We are going to be sending you instructions on how to schedule your session as Joan. Well, so Joan, any advice to Lindsay on how to emotionally prepare?
Open mind and have some fun, and very graciously and generously, Joanna provides you with a transcript, so you don't have to be worried about trying to retain everything that she's sharing with you. But I would say, yeah, meditate for a few minutes beforehand if you can, breathe, and then jump in.
Brilliant.
Oh,
Thank you.
Joan, that's excellent advice. I will tell you, you are not the first person who's actually done a meditation session. And word on the street is that people have post-coaching hangovers from my sessions, which I consider as a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. You know how it is. I do want to do a quick.
I just got an energy burst.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Catherine, you and I threw down in about, I don't know, what was it, 30 seconds on your call? You came in with this path and I was like, no, we are going over here. And we did it, which was super fun. We had a shortcut language. What I would love to do, especially for folks, I see a lot of familiar faces. Is there somebody who has not seen a transformation before? Maybe one of you with your cameras off who would like to see a bit of a before and after demo of what I'm talking about. If you're new, have we got any volunteers, Kelly, that have come on through chat?
No one's come through chat yet. But they should.
They should. I know. Larissa, I see you making faces there at the screen. You've got your camera on, and have you been to the show before? Is this your first time?
First time.
Oh.
And I just joined. I was in a meeting, so
you're like,
apologize.
Everything. Well, that's even better. So we're going to do this because I think it's always, especially because we've got some newbies on the show as well. And Dawn tells me every week, you can all grow up and be like Dawn, because she shows up to every show and has for almost 6 months now. We're besties. She says every time I do one of these that she learns something. And so this is for Dawn. So Larissa, we've been talking about ambition and generosity here. My first question for you is, so you showed up to the show to talk about potential and recognizing it, and why? What is your ambition professionally? What is the thing that is changing in your career that you are trying to navigate?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess in one word, I am looking for an opportunity to give back more. I just feel like I've been in my field for some time and I have enjoyed every bit of it, but I think it's about time that I show up a little bit differently, which is probably on the other side, which is more mentoring, sharing what I've learned in the last 15 years or so. So I feel like this is a transition. There has to be a mindset shift for me as well, how to do that best and how to add more value for other people. So that probably I see as the next chapter in my career. So how to do that well.
I have many thoughts on this. My first of all is you know that there isn't any school that you go to that they give you a sticker and tell you you can be a mentor now.
Yeah.
So let's just pretend for a second that you've just gone to mentor school and I am the queen of mentor school. And I just gave you, you just graduated with an A. Congratulations. Just say that out loud in your head a couple of times, because like you already have all of the ingredients. If you have been through experiences, mentoring is just about sharing ideas and listening to other people's experiences and reflecting with them, and not much more. So you don't have to graduate or pass anything. I always, when I started mentoring, I just said, well, there's a whole other narrative about how I hate the word mentor, but that's another day. I just tried to model mentors that I admired and just did that. You really can't actually screw things up. So here's my second question. I need you to be selfish for just a second, because we absolutely are generous here on the show, but we absolutely start in a place of this is about you. What happens for you if you are known more for being a mentor and giving back? Like, what are you ambitious for there?
As you can tell, I haven't thought about that. But I think it would be more, I think it's more internal, sort of like the recognition that, you know, yeah, I think recognition that there is a need for something that I can offer. And the more I'm sort of, let's say, when people understands that, maybe they will reach out more. And
Okay.
you know, right now it's more of
what happens.
Okay, I can tell you one way I probably gain a little bit from this is obviously I'll be hearing from people from all walks of lives, and you know, from all sorts of career stages and things like that. So I think I can learn different things from them. So it's also a learning opportunity for me as well. And
Okay.
yeah,
So
so
I'm going to now do, we're doing a slightly different demonstration of how the Joanna mind works. I'm going to mirror back what I think I just heard. And I want you to tell me if I'm right. You are saying two things. I want my value to be seen and recognized. And I want opportunities to learn about new things, because in learning new things, I can grow.
yes, you're spot on.
So that, by the way, is what mirroring back something and saying, is this what I hear? Like that whole, what did you hear? This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Because let me just ask you, how do you feel right now that you have been heard clearly?
Feels pretty good.
Yeah. And how clear is, like, what are your next steps? Were a little bit muddy at the beginning of the conversation, or are they a little less muddy? Are they a little clearer now?
Yeah, they're definitely clearer for myself even, you know.
Okay.
So it's probably next time if I explain it to somebody, I could probably better explain this.
I'm gonna say this again. I had an amazing conversation with a client the other day who I'm going to be posting about this on LinkedIn over the weekend, because I was like, this is freaking genius. And she and I were having a conversation about her need to be generous at all times. And we were talking about how walking uphill is significantly harder than walking downhill. And she had a bit of an epiphany and said, I've just realized that if somebody else asks me to walk uphill, I will do it in a second. But if I have to walk uphill by myself, I won't. And so she has now decided, because to manifest your ambitions, you have to be equally selfish and egocentric and all of that sort of stuff, as well as generous and kind and all of those things, because those are the awesome people, right? Is every time she gives her time, gives her intelligence, gives her ideas to somebody, she's literally writing down how much time she has spent doing that, and she is going to invest the same time in herself. and holding herself accountable to this. So as an example, she had a restaurant owner ask her to help her with Instagram strategy. And she was like, absolutely, can spend an hour on the phone talking to you about your Instagram strategy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then turn around and said, I need to schedule an hour working on my own Instagram strategy. So living in both lands at the same time, I think is super important. Now, we haven't actually done the demonstration piece, and I do think it's important. And only because you are very new to the world of Joanna. So quick question, what is it you do for a living?
I work for a biopharmaceutical company.
Doing what?
And doing insights and strategy related work.
So super smart stuff that I am not going to understand. Okay. What do you want to, so there are people making decisions about you in rooms you are not in. Oh, I know what answer you're going to give me. What is it you want them to learn about you? Other than that you are smart and you can get shit done.
I would say I have an extreme passion because I'm obviously in the industry that I'm in, extreme passion to understand people, not just as patients, but who they are as people. And then try to do something really innovative in the space that would really benefit everybody. So it's more about, thinking less about from the organization standpoint and more about what we're doing for them. So those are the two things that drive me the most. So I'm like constantly looking for new ways of doing things, questioning sort of traditional ways of doing and thinking. So those are the things.
Those are both pretty awesome. Which one? You can only teach one thing at a time unless you're Steve Jobs and you're launching the iPhone, but that's a different story. But like, which one of those two would you prefer that they
Probably
get?
the second one.
The second one?
Yeah.
Why do you think we need to break the rules and look at a new way of doing things?
It's probably also because of the industry I'm in. We've been, doing things pretty much the same way for like 50, 70 years now. Not much has changed in healthcare. So I think I'm seeing sort of a new trend, or I don't know what else to call it, but something that is very new and fascinating and can help tons of people, which is a digital ways of delivering care. And I think that can really save the cost, save a lot of pain points, like solve a lot of problems. So yeah.
So I'm going to flip that around. Here's what I heard and how you could teach people about your potential. And I'm just going to make this up. And yes, this has been recorded. Is what we have learned over the last year in the medical industry is that the old way of doing things will no longer serve the patients that we need to serve, because the global world we live in, digital tools, and the people we are impacting are all over the world. I think this is an amazing opportunity to rethink how we do things and rethink how we leverage technology and the people associated with. And so as somebody who is always looking at insights and strategy, I am always open to talk about how do we rethink how biopharma, I think I got that right, could be implemented for not only the benefit of the organization, but for the planet and the people in it. Do you hear the difference about how that can teach people about who you are and what it is you want to do? Did that sound ungenerous and super braggy, or did it sound like it's actually somebody would want to talk to?
I don't think it's braggy at all. I think, yeah.
This is the difference in how, okay, so ladies who've got their cameras on, how many of you would be like, I would want to have a conversation with Larissa about this because I want to know more? Yeah. FYI, we all do, because we're all like, wait a second, how is it I can get like McDonald's delivered to me in like 20 minutes or less, but getting the stabby jab, not so much. So please continue doing your awesome work. That's fantastic. So Larissa, amazing. Thank you for being my demonstration, but that's an example of how you talk about potentialism. All right, so I am going to wrap up the show. Let me just give you reminders for next week, because yes, we are here every Friday with bells on and sparkles. We are doing, these are all my favorite shows, but this show is a don't miss show. Why? Because I'm going to be sharing my magic spreadsheet that actually helps you model different futures. So if you are sitting there going, well, Joanna, that's awesome, but how do I choose this future thing? This is the show for you to come to. We're going to be using very simple math, and we're going to be talking about all of the things, because choices around your career should not be binary. It should not just be about title and compensation. We're going to be talking about all of that. The tool guide that comes with it gives you a copy of the spreadsheet so that you can do your own. It is literally the most requested tool that my clients use. And actually, if you go through my larger executive transformation work, everybody does this, and everyone goes, whoa, that is super helpful. And the good news is once you get the tool, you can use it over and over and over again. So do not miss next week's show. Invite your friends, especially those of them who are going, I don't even know what I want to do in the future. Or actually had a guy last night who was all like, I've got 2 job offers. How do I think through them both? We thought through all of them, and he's going to get stuff. I will actually say we had a client last week who managed to negotiate a private jet in her job offer through all of this, which made me very excited for her. So big, important show to show up to. Do not miss it. Reminder, we've got a learning guide from today. You'll log into our Thinkific platform and be able to download it and get all of the instructions. We also ask questions. And then, of course, if you're ever interested in scheduling one-on-one time with me and going through the transformation experience, I think Kelly's dropping links to both in the chat. If you're watching live on YouTube, we will have links in all of the show notes. Challenge for this week for everybody, at the very least, go amplify somebody else awesome. Go do what I just did with Larissa, because I'll tell you, I feel pretty fantastic as well. I hope Larissa does as well. Getting to practice the muscle of potentialism with people will make you better at it, and will make it easier for you to be able to talk to it with other people. So like, consider this your sit-ups for the weekend. Go do this. Because where this all comes to is just a reminder that the fairy godmother did not pick Cinderella by accident. The fairy godmother picked Cinderella because she saw the potential in her, and she was generous with her, and then all of the good things happened. So that is this week's show this week. Thank you so much for coming. For those of you that are on the live show, stick around, because we're going to open this up to full Q&A if you are still sticking around. If you have questions, throw them in chat now to Kelly. I'm also going to be talking out. Otherwise, for those of you that are tuning in, thanks for coming, and I will see you all next time. Ultimately, we're here to help you figure out how to teach other people who the future you is, so that you can be you in the future. Because the clearer you are about who you are, what you want, and teach other people why that's awesome, the more likely you get to be you. I know, it's a bit of a circle. I'm Joanna, your potentialist and fairy godmother, and I wish you the very best. Thanks for coming.